Today, we're digging into one of humanity's oldest, and I mean oldest, and most profound ideas. It's an invention so simple you've definitely used it, but it's so ancient that its real origins are a complete mystery. We're talking about tally marks and the incredible story of the very first time a thought was literally turned into stone. You know, if you've ever kept score in a game by making 4 little lines and then a 5th one slashed across them, well, congratulations. You have just tapped into one of the most ancient number recording systems in all of human history. It's a simple act that connects us directly to our deepest, most distant past. But that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What did that first record, the original tally, actually look like? This is basically a detective story. We're on an investigation into the moment our ancestors decided that, memory just wasn't enough anymore. They needed to carve their thoughts right into the world around them. Okay, let's get into it. So, our story starts deep in the Paleolithic era. We're talking tens of thousands of years ago. Hunter-gatherers had a lot to keep track of. Animals, seasons, social stuff, but they had no writing. So how on earth did they store all that complex information? Well, they invented what archaeologists now call an artificial memory system. I know, it sounds super fancy, but the concept is revolutionary. A simple notched bone or a stick becomes a piece of technology. It's a way to take a thought, like we have 7 fish, and make it durable, visible. This is the very beginning of externalizing the human mind. It's a huge deal.
So, why are we always looking at bones and stones from this period? Well, it's something archaeologists call a survivor's bias. These tough materials are what lasted for millennia. Just try to imagine how many of these records were carved into wood or maybe even woven into fiber and are now just gone, lost to time. We're only seeing a tiny fraction of this ancient information revolution.
And that brings us to maybe the most famous suspect in our entire investigation. This is an artifact that shows up in countless math history textbooks. So let's meet the main character of our story, the Dolny Vestinitsi wolf bone.
This thing was found back in 1937 at what I'd call a superstar Paleolithic site in the Czech Republic. It's about 30,000 years old. It really is the celebrity of ancient counting, the go-to example for early human intelligence. But, celebrities, they often have complicated stories.
The famous claim, the one you always hear, is that this bone has 55 notches, and they're all carefully arranged in groups. It sounds like a slam dunk case for an ancient tally, right? But here's the twist. This claim is almost always repeated from secondary sources. The bone itself has never really been put through the rigorous modern analysis we'd expect today.
And this perfectly illustrates a core principle of science. Just because a story is popular, well, that doesn't make it proven. In archaeology, because everyone says so is never, ever enough. The crucial point here is that you've got to test the evidence yourself, directly.
So how do you go from a good story to good science? How do we really know if we're looking at some ancient calculation or just a bunch of random scratches from, say, butchering an animal? This is the big interpretation problem. And to solve it, archaeologists have developed this incredible kind of forensic toolkit.
It all starts with context. Where exactly was it found? Then comes taphonomy, which is just a cool word for ruling out any natural damage. After that, they pull out powerful microscopes to see how the marks were made, and they use something called morphometrics to measure them statistically. And this is brilliant. They use experimentation, actually replicating the marks themselves to create a baseline for what intentional really truly looks like.
Okay, so let's see this toolkit in action on a completely different artifact. If the wolf bone is the celebrity, this next piece of evidence is like the quiet, diligent lab technician who actually did all the hard work. Let's meet the hyena femur from Les Perdels in France.
Now this bone is even older. We're talking around 50,000 years old, and it's associated with Neanderthals. So yeah, it's a BFD. It's way less famous than the wolf bone, but it has been put through that entire modern archaeological toolkit, and let me tell you, the results are fascinating.
So here's what the toolkit revealed. Microscopic analysis showed the marks were absolutely made deliberately, all in one sitting with the same exact tool. And crucially, they don't match any of the butchery marks found at that same site. The conclusion they reached is cautious, but it's also really powerful. This is the earliest possible numerical notation that's backed up by strong, testable evidence. So this just perfectly illustrates the tale of our two bones. On one hand, you've got the famous story, the wolf bone, a powerful cultural idea for sure, but one that really needs more testing. And on the other hand, you have the Les Perdels femur, a rigorous scientific case study that shows us how we can build a much stronger argument.
Okay, so we've got these ancient scratches on some old bones. Why does any of this matter so much? What's the big takeaway here? Well, it's all about a fundamental, massive shift in how the human mind itself works.
Now let's be really clear about something. A tally mark is not a numeral. It doesn't have a distinct symbol for 3 versus 5. But what it does is absolutely critical. It takes an abstract concept like quantity and makes it visible, permanent, and shareable. This is the very first step on the incredibly long road to writing, to data, and to all of mathematics.
And wow, what a long road it was. I mean, just look at this timeline. There are tens of thousands of years between these first possible experiments in recording information and the development of the first true writing systems in Mesopotamia. This was not a single invention. It was a slow, gradual process of humanity learning how to think with things.
So in the end, these ancient bones, they don't give us a simple, neat answer. What they give us is something much more valuable. They show us that the real work of science isn't just about finding the answers. It's about learning how to ask better, sharper questions of our past, one single notch at a time.